Good afternoon, everyone. I tried to do this the other day, but got sidetracked, as usual. And I meant to do this about a week ago after I heard the first debate between the former president and the current president, but once again, ran out of time and space on my phone. So I'm hoping that today proves to be more beneficial. I meant to do my take on the presidential debate. But now I think I'm going to give my 2 cents worth about what happened at the rally in Pennsylvania where President Trump was shot. I don't know that I'm stunned or shocked, considering the state of the world at large today. Whether we're talking about Europe or the Middle East or our neighbor to the north, Canada, or the United States. The world at large is comprised of, as Hillary Clinton so profoundly noted so many years ago, and I lambasted her for her opinion and her purview of the world. But she was right. And in fact, on this particular issue, I do stand with her. The world at large is nothing more, nothing less, and nothing better than a disgusting, disgraceful basket of deplorables. We have allowed ourselves to lower our standards to such an extent that we are capable of attempting to kill not only figuratively, but literally those we disagree with. We have taken 500 million steps back, making the Stone Age look sophisticated compared to today's society. I personally was appalled at the actions of this young man, only 20, who so sadly lost his life at such a young and tender and early age, leaving his family and friends and relatives behind devastated, confused, confounded, and empty. And my heart bleeds for the innocent individual who was merely attending a rally for his candidate of choice in a free nation, who lost his life leaving behind a family. This is disgraceful, but yet not surprising. After all, we condoned, even those of us who didn't approve of, but sat idly by as we watched those political puppeteers tell us that it was okay for individuals who disagreed with a conservative vantage point to set up autonomous zones, to make our streets unsafe with looting and rioting and BLM movements that were comprised not of people seeking retributions for rights that they wanted wrong, but for ridiculous ideologies and world perspectives and views that are counterintuitive to any nation, to any society at large. And yet our politicians, who are supposed to protect us, allowed it to happen. And we, the people, sat by idly condemning people like the young man. Oh, what is his name again? Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue, but I'll remember it soon and I'll come back to that. But like the young man who went to defend our nation and unfortunately killed several people in the process. People who were trying desperately to further take down our nation, and which ultimately led to them trying to take down a former president because he may potentially be a future president. Now, I know many think he may have been a Republican, and others are suggesting he was a Democrat, but does it really matter? Depravity is depravity on either side of the border, on either side of the political party lines. In fact, I recently read the news up in Canada where when I met my husband 20 years ago, Canada had a negligible amount of crime compared to New York, where I was born and raised, and in comparison to the US, primarily not because we're worse people, but because we have exponentially more people than our neighbor to the north. So crime was something, dare I say, negligible. And now there's an uprise and an uptick in violence. We have people taking over campuses and destroying statues and destroying communities and society as a whole. And we have not learned a blessed damn thing from past experience. Look at what happened to President Lincoln. Look at what happened to John F. Kennedy. Look at what they tried to do to Ronald Reagan. Heck, they shot John Lennon and he wasn't running for office, which proves we are animals, as President Trump said, because civil people living in a civil society behave civilized, or dare I say, in a civilized manner. People in polite society behave politely. We clamor and clamber on about political correctness, and we do not have individual societal correctness. No, we don't. We don't have societal correctness at all. We have told our boys that if they feel like girls, they can therefore be a girl. We're not talking about a preference. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But feeling like something doesn't give you the right to be that. I may feel like the Queen of England. I may feel like the president of the bank. I may feel like one of the heads of state. That doesn't make me one. And as I've well noted before, I would be locked up and put in an insane asylum if I dared tried to promote that ideology. And yet, we have told our children that if they feel like they are the opposite gender, if they can be the opposite gender, and they should be. Who are we to tell them otherwise? If they feel like they want to be the opposite gender on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, but like the gender they were born on Tuesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, then that's also acceptable. We have become a society of sickos and fools. And so why are we surprised that someone took aim at the president? I wouldn't be shocked if they took aim at anybody that disagreed with them. And yet we put the blame on guns. Seriously, people, are you that lame? Guns are not the problem. Any more than forks and knives are the problem for making people fat. Not even food is the culprit in being overweight. We are supposed to be free-thinking, intelligent people with discernment. So if we see an entire chocolate cake in front of us, a little light bulb, or as Gru would say, light bulb, should go on in our heads, saying maybe I should have a small piece, but not the entire cake. I can drink one beer, but not the entire case. So we can't, in good conscience, blame the beer or the beer manufacturers for us being drunk. It was a choice that we as adults, with common sense and discernment, made on our own, knowing the consequences and choosing to ignore them. Therefore, I don't care if you come down my block with an army tank and a machine gun. If you use careful, clear discernment, I and anyone around me are not at danger or in danger, because you will not use those against me or anyone else. The tank is not the problem. The person behind the tank making the decisions is the problem. So we don't need to get rid of guns. We don't need to get rid of knives and forks. We need to eradicate society of the individuals who make poor decisions, uncalculated, selfish decisions, barbaric decisions, Neolithic decisions that put society in harm's way and that are geared towards destroying society. And we have to stop putting the blame on people like John Wilkes Booth and, oh my goodness, Lee Harvey Oswald, who shot Lincoln and Kennedy. We have to stop looking at the scapegoats, and we have to start realizing that behind it's like a chess game. Behind every move that happens in politics, there is someone controlling the pawns and even the kings and the queens. And if we think long and hard enough about it, we all know who those people are. They're the people with the deepest pockets and the most power. Our politicians across the globe are merely the same as the wizard in The Wizard of Oz. They are the ones hiding behind the curtain while they are being puppeteered by others who are telling them what to do, what to say, how to do it, when to say it, etc., 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 etc. And they are causing us to hate our fellow man and woman. They are causing a rift between families and friends. And they are destroying us. They're destroying our families, they're destroying our communities while they continue to gain power and power over us. Why, for example, do you think home prices are so high at the current moment? Why are interest rates so high? Why are prices of cost and goods why are prices and cost of goods so high? Because the powers that be are afraid of losing their power. And they're afraid of us taking back control. They don't want us to control them. Remember, they work for us. We hire them via our vote. So what we say goes, or should go anyway. But they don't want that. They don't want you and me to be able to buy a business or a home so that they can scoop up the farmland like the Bill Gateses of society and the Jeff Bezoses of society and the Dr. Fauci's of society and the Justin Trudeau's of society, and the list goes on in an unending fashion. They want to own everything so that they essentially turn us in the West, in the Americas, and across Europe into China and into Venezuela, where the people essentially own nothing. Oh, sure, they live in houses, they live in their home, and can even bequeath their home to future generations. But the caveat is, those future generations do not own any more of those homes than you or I do. The homes are owned by the powers that be, the powers who want to puppeteer us, the powers who want to control us. Why do you think Canada's medical system stinks to high heaven? They didn't have social medicine until 1968, and that was only supposed to happen on a trial basis. But there's the catch. Therein lies the rub. The government realized that by giving people something for nothing, or at least having the people perceive they were getting something for nothing or for free, even though they're taxed up the wazoo, the people would buy the BS. And so now they could control who got to see a doctor, For what reason, how quickly they could see a doctor, and for what reason, how quickly they could be treated, and therefore they can control the outcome of your and my diagnosis, and therefore, in the end, they can control the population, who lives, who dies, and when. Taking a shot at President Trump was, in my opinion, going to happen. In fact, I was shocked it didn't happen sooner. Not because I dislike him. He's one of my favorite candidates. As you've heard me say before, I really liked Ron DeSantis. I really liked Vivek Ramaswamy. I love Dr. Ben Carson. And I would love to see them all partner for the better of the nation. But I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner because, as I said, people kill for a lot less. People attack for a lot less. And he has a target on his back. He's had a target on his back since 2016 because he is an outsider. Yes, he's part of the elites, but he's on the outskirts of the elites. And notice how many of his so-called friends have turned on him. How many of his colleagues have turned on him. And the same goes for Joe Biden. He was the useful idiot that they all put in office until he no longer served their purpose. And now they're stabbing him in the back in front of his face. So it doesn't shock me whether it's Trump or Biden or Kamala or anyone. In fact, when Ivana Trump fell down the stairs at the tender age of 70-something, which by today's standards is not that old, nor did she have any serious or severe medical problems that were outed or that we knew about. And she probably had some of the best medical attention money can buy. And somehow she managed to trip down the stairs? I don't buy it. I think they started sending a very clear message way back then. And they couldn't go after Trump or his children because that, my friends, would be too obvious. How did we get here? We got here because the people in this nation have looked around the globe and have taken notes from around the world and have garnered and gleaned and implemented the worst that nations across the universe have to offer. They haven't taken the best that these nations have to offer. They've taken the worst and trying their best to implement the worst to make their job of controlling us easier. And unfortunately, it starts at the top and works its way down like a domino effect. It starts with the politicians who make empty promises and expect us to swallow it like a pill laced with fentanyl that will ultimately kill us. And then it starts from our churches, church leaders, not everybody. Come on, people. We can't paint everybody with the same broad brushstroke. There are good people. There are very good people. But unfortunately, there are more underhanded people out for their own personal, political, financial gains than there are good people. And so the good people get lost in the crowd and lost in the shuffle. Look at academia. We have prominent people in academia who are helping foster ideologies that are incorporated into indoctrinating our children and destroying them from a very young age. Policies, protocol, etc., that are aimed at confusing our kids, at blurring the lines, at removing any moral compass, not only from the schools and from their studies, but from their core existence. We were all born knowing what is right and wrong. If we see poo on the floor, we don't need anyone to tell us we should be disgusted and not eat it and not touch it. Even a young child will go, ew, poo. At least if they're past infant stage. And yet, that is exactly our goal. It is the goal of the powers that be to blur those lines between good and bad, right and wrong, normal and abnormal. And they get you at a very young age. In fact, someone who used to be in academia recently made a very bold statement on Facebook. And it shows just how ignorant and apathetic and uncaring and how sick in their mind, body, and soul many of these people who are supposed to mentor our children really are in their heart and soul when they go after our children with ridiculous rhetoric aimed at destroying the way they see the world and destroying the clarity that is all around us in this world. This academician or former academician said America, and that probably would include all of North America, free countries, America specifically is not a Christian nation, but rather a nation where one is free to practice Christianity. That is wrong. And I don't know how they got past kindergarten because they're obviously not smarter than a fifth grader. This country, in fact, is a Christian nation, similarly to how much of the Middle East are Muslim nations. That doesn't mean others cannot or will not practice their own philosophies and religions within the confines of their own homes. But what it does mean that those who choose voluntarily and willingly to visit or reside in those nations must abide by the rules that have been the fundamental crux and foundation of those nations for centuries. The head coverings, the modest dress, and the list goes on. And that might even include visitors to those nations. But anyone who frequents those nations, pays a visit to those nations, resides in those nations, knows full well what is expected of them. And we here in the United States and in the North Americas have lowered our standards to where standards are no longer existent. Anyone can be anything at any time, flip-flopping from one perspective to another. And there are no clear lines, no clear boundaries, no clear borders, no clear expectations. We are a failing nation. We are a failing world. And yes, the United States is a Christian nation because the founding fathers who came over and built the nation, established the nation, established it on a set of rules, regulations, guidelines, and fundamental foundations that were versed in the Bible and on Judeo-Christian principles. So yes, the nation is a Judeo-Christian nation, biblically founded, where others who choose not to be Jewish or Christian are free to pursue their own way of life and to practice their own culture, their own traditions, speak their own language within their own home, pass it on to their children, which they should do, and practice their own religion in their own synagogues, temples, what have you, without condemnation and without fear of abuse or malignment. But essentially, the United States and North America are nations based on, built on, and founded upon Judeo-Christian principles and fundamentals, which in essence makes them Christian nations who simply give others the right to choose what they want to practice and the freedom to practice it. Unfortunately, people don't like people who speak the truth. And unfortunately, Donald Trump is one of those people. You may not always have to like what he says, but if there's truth in it, you have to at least contemplate his point of view and acknowledge the vantage point from which he heralds. My son tells me he likes me better when I dye my hair. I may not like to hear it, but I have to give it consideration. And if he has a valid point, consider dyeing my hair. People have to stop asking themselves, what side of the political aisle do I walk on? And start asking themselves, which one of these political candidates, whether they're handsome, Trudeau, for example, people voted for the clown because he was handsome. People have to start asking themselves the essential questions. Do I want to vote for him because he's handsome or because he's done a good job for me, my family, my community, my neighborhood, etc., etc.? I'm not dating Trudeau. I'm not dating Donald Trump. I'm not dating Barack Obama. I'm not dating any one of them. And I highly doubt any one of them would want to date me. And if you think I'm a bitch on here, you should see me at home. But the fact of the matter is, you have to ask yourself, who put more money in my bank account? Who did more for my schools? Who made my community neighborhood safer? And that's the person you need to support, regardless of what label you choose to slap on yourself. Because apparently, in today's society, labels, even genetic biological labels, are meaningless. I think what happened to President Trump, regardless of if it was President Trump or President Biden, is shameful, and it is disgraceful, and it shows what kind of lack of civility our people in general, how they lack value for life and other opinions. And this is only the beginning, I fear. If we're not careful, if we don't restore a candidate who's about law and order, who's about being strict, who's about punishing those who deserve to be punished, we are looking at another civil war and perhaps another revolution. And that's pretty sad. We're heading into 2025, folks. That is very, very sad. Be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you vote for. You just might get it.